I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Hello and welcome back to the show. Joining me today is my man Steven from the Biblical Hitmen. Always have great conversations with him, so I'm really looking forward to this. Steven, how you doing?
What's up, brother, man? This is always a pleasure. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity again to come onto the show. We got a lot to talk about, man, because since the last time I believe you were on my show, we got into the divine feminine. We started to cover Ishtar, Inanna, Ashtoreth, and you son of a gun, you Mr. Magoo. Listen,
I didn't mean to rope you into this one,
you
man.
you roped me into it, and I paid for it the other night, which we'll probably get into that. But if anyone's curious where they could find me and my show, the Biblical Hitmen, YouTube, Instagram, X, TikTok, Facebook, I mean everywhere, and pretty much on audio stuff, the Biblical Hitmen. While you're there, I just kind of encourage, if people like the show, they like what I say, leave a 5-star review, hit the notification bell, and drop a follow. And do the same for Tim's show, because this is the currency that helps our shows flow through the algorithms. Obviously, it's what we deal with our shows being moved into feeds or whatever. So if you could do that oh so kindly,
Thank you.
that
Thank
benefits
you.
us.
It does benefit us, and I won't linger on it too long, but I need to get better about that too. So, yeah, guys, if you just follow or subscribe, depending on where you listen, that helps us so much. And of course, it helps when you share the show with your friends and all that. So, yeah, please, I'm glad you reminded me to say that. But man, maybe we should have prayed over this thing tonight, because you just reminded me of you had an experience because of this stuff that we're going to get into. And
Yeah.
I got a little chill on it, bro. I forgot about it,
Yeah. It's insane, man.
because it's happened to me too, of course. This
Which I
same
gotta hear that. You gotta share that with me.
Mhm.
You
I'm trying
know.
to think of which one do I share, man, but I
Oh
will.
man.
I will. Let me start by saying this. What we get into today, it doesn't have to make total sense to everyone, or us, by the way, because I think, not trying to dive totally in the deep end this early in the show, but I think we are, as humans, the newbies on the block. There was a rebellion before we were created, I believe, a rebellion involving all these other entities. I think that we were kind of made in their fashion. I think they look more like us than maybe we think. I think that there's the anatomy of a man probably goes back to, I don't know, before we were created. We were fashioned in that form for a reason, right? But it was a rebellion involving all these other entities, and I think that we are younger siblings here. So that's a big world. It's nobody's going to grasp that all in one night. That I started big with that because I think it does have a place on the table when we're talking about the unseen realm and the spiritual realm. I do think we're the newbies on the block and we're playing catch up here. So it just doesn't have to make sense all at once. Is what I'm. That's all. That's my point.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that we try to talk about in a way to where we're naturally exposing this idea, these entities, these little g gods that civilizations and groups of people have been worshiping since, before the flood, right? That's a very long
Mm.
time ago. You just look at all the cultures. There was a flood, there was a cataclysm that did happen. There was many populations, animals and humans, that were wiped completely off of the face of the earth for some reason. And I think too, when we're going to get into this conversation, like, why did God do that? Well, it goes back to the fallen angel agenda. It goes back to them developing a race, children, and then those children were also having other children. So you had demigods that were having children as well, and those were what's referenced in Enoch as the Eliud. But you had a bunch of things that could have been taking place there. You could have been having where these demigods were now experimenting with, other flesh, and this is could be where a lot of hybridization kind of comes into play, whatever, right? But we know that it all stems back to a seed war. There's one lineage versus the other, and I think it was just a game of like mass extinction, and to stop that from happening, God destroys things, to stop things from happening. And I'm pretty sure one of the things we're going to get into is Babylon, right? And
Mm,
and and not only Babylon, but just the idea of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. And God destroyed that because you have to understand anything that they were to put to their imagination, they were going to be able to do. So these are very
yes.
interesting points to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited already about this. I mean, we're going to go deep here. I mean, yeah, there's Enoch is a good, Enoch chapter 69 comes to mind because I was looking for names for these older siblings, right? And when I say they're older siblings, I don't mean that they're all good. There was a rebellion. That means that some of them turned bad, from what I could tell. And there's a big list of names in Enoch 69, and it's interesting. One of the names that I did not see in there is Lucifer. So maybe we can get into that. I don't really necessarily care if we do or if we don't. I just think that some of the things that we've heard in church is not the full story. I'm not saying it's the incorrect story. I'm just saying it's not the full story. So there's a lot to unpack with this subject. Certainly when it comes to Babylon and the goddess, because that's a real thing, and that's a name that most Christians aren't used to hearing. The
Right. And I
goddess,
think pe-
the goddess.
I think people I think it goes over a lot of people's heads what Babylon is, what are the characteristics of Mystery Babylon, for example, right? It's a female. It
Hmm.
sits on many waters, and on their forehead is Mystery Babylon, right? There's 7 heads, 10 horns. John's like, dude, what am I looking at here? And the angel's like, chill, brother. I'm gonna tell you. And he describes to him what these things mean to give him discernment. But
Well, that
Mystery Babylon, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, that goddess Babylon has changed form a lot over time that I've
Oh yeah.
seen. I mean, I'm thinking of one iteration right now that I just found the other day. I think that this is associated with Ishtar. I apologize in advance to Catholics; they might not like this, but it just sounds like Ishtar to me. There's this entity called Our Lady of Pillar, Our Lady the Pillar, goddess saint of Spain, sort of a thing. Her day that they celebrate is October 12th, which is the day that they tell us Columbus found the Americas and the New World. And well, you know that she was made the patroness of the New World by those guys. So, and what did she do? Well, over time, she appeared to them or appeared to other people and asked them to build her temples. That is classic Ishtar stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
that's why maybe once we get to the book of Revelation and we see, wow, there's a lot of strange details here. What is this thing? Well, this thing has changed form a lot over time, I think. Maybe that's a factor just to think about.
Right, right. And that's why it's mystery, right? It'll change. It's part of its nature. But it's still the same, if that makes any sense. There's like different titles that kind of start to get slapped over it over time. And I think, for example, and again, this isn't against anyone that's Catholic or anything, but the Catholic Church has a divine goddess that they do worship, and that is the Queen of Heaven, that is the Virgin Mary. And I say this because of what just the Vatican and the Pope claims about, the Queen of Heaven, talking about that the Queen of Heaven is the road to God. And so you have this divine goddess that's a part of this religion that does a lot of incense burning. And number one, there's ancient Osiris architecture, a part of the Vatican city state. And what they are worshiping is that ancient Osiris mythology. But then you have to go, okay, well, what is the ancient Osiris mythology? Where did they get that from? But it goes all the way back to Babylon. It goes all the way back to Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. And so
Mm.
you had this trinity that was a part of uniting the world and creating balance, and also working to harvest the ether. the energy of this universe to make of all their imaginations be able to come true. And what I break that down into, because you son of a gun, dude, I've been going down such a mystery Babylon. You've taken me there, Tim.
Yeah, I think
You
that
know,
this is a very real thing. I didn't even mean to unleash this on everybody, but I've been talking about this every so often on podcasts for about a year now.
and it's going around on more podcasts. People are talking about Mystery Babylon all of a sudden.
Yeah, and there's people talking about it on podcasts who don't know who I am, and I probably haven't heard me either. This thing has just opened wide open, if I can even
Yeah.
say it that way. But um, I wanna comment on something real quick. I haven't made my mind up yet on whether or not this Mary goddess figure of the Catholics. I don't know what that is yet. I'm still forming an opinion on that. But I'll tell you what some of the mystery schools say, because I've read their work on this. And they say that the Catholics are deceived, and that is the goddess that is Ishtar. By the
Mhm.
way, people
It's
listening,
Semiramis.
the goddess Babylon, from what I can tell, I traced it back. She's Ishtar Inanna. Goes back to the Sumerians, maybe older than that, but for sure the Sumerians. She's mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and then you see the Mystery Babylon in Babylon, of course, the goddess Babylon. She just goes by all these different names, but the mystery schools and traditions, I've literally heard them say, "Oh, that's Ishtar." They're just calling her Mary. It's the same thing. For me, it's what I'm trying to figure out here is what are the outside forces that are constantly pushing and pressuring and influencing humanity. That's what I'm after. So I'm still formulating opinions here, but it's clear to me that a dark force is here. It's here and it's operating, and a part of it is a her. Not to be sexist, but that's just what it is. I think there's male too. There's some of these entities are male, and you have your Gadriels, you have your Semyaza, you have the Assyrian running around. But I think that this UFO thing is ran by this goddess, in my opinion. And
Mhm.
selective shows need to be done on those individuals that I mentioned to really understand this milieu of evil essentially properly. So, but going back to something you said, the goddess is the same religion. It's the same religion since Nimrod. That's a
Yeah.
powerful statement, and I agree. And I'll add one more thing, because his kingdom include Nimrod's kingdom included Babel and Uruk, and they had temples to this goddess, and they didn't have temples to Lucifer, from what I could tell. They had temples to this goddess. They had and this just expands out from there, right? This continues on to be a global thing to groups of people everywhere. It's ubiquitous in the ancient world. They're called sky goddesses, and usually they go. You could trace them back to one main goddess. So they're sky
Yeah.
beings.
Yeah, I agree. And so this goes back to I believe that the origin obviously takes place before the flood. I think this is something that originates from the Garden of Eden. And I'll explain what do you mean, Stephen? Well, strap in, because I think that this starts with the serpent. Okay, you had the serpent who was an avatar of the avatar of the tree of knowledge and good and evil. And so you had a connection between these two things, and the two could be one, right? But it seems to be that they're separate for a reason. And what was the difference in the garden is you had God and his truth, and then you had the serpent who I believe was conditioning and talking and deceiving, or at least whispering in the ears of creation, another religion, another idea, a totally separate religion that completely counteracts and is inverted from God's truth. And so Cain kills Abel. Cain is cursed, and he goes out and he's sent out of the garden. He travels eastward into the land of Nod, builds cities, and he also has, takes on wives, and he also has a lineage. He has children, Enoch and Lamech, who are the the people who are known to have written down this mysticism that was passed down from their father. And this mysticism, mystery, right? There's a connection there. And I think they're not only passing down sacred knowledge, but I think they were passing down this sacred wisdom that was a false religion. And I think it was the exact inversion of everything that God kind of creates and establishes. And so if you think of the nature of God is man. And so that makes complete sense why the serpent would be preaching something, or Cain would have been teaching his sons, that there was a divine goddess, an ultimate goddess that makes up the fabric of our universe. And this gets into like Gnosticism. This gets into that whole idea, where all the mystics, at some point, they're Gnostics, in my opinion. And
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I'm just going to add to that because I have
Mhm.
a text here that you sent me, and I thought this was really good, so I saved it. You said Shambhala is their goal. Everything comes from Eastern mysticism, the land of Nod, where Cain went to dwell after getting cast out of the garden, built cities, and started a Babylonian religion. And I like that. I think Cain joined up with, personally, this is what I think. I think Cain joined up with these others that maybe they weren't all the way human. That's what I think. There are a lot of
Like day six
beings.
creation or
Yeah,
something, maybe. Yeah,
goes
I
back to what I was saying at the opening of this thing. There's a lot of beings that were created before we were. And yeah, the Bible says after he killed Abel, he went and started a civilization. How? Well, personally, I don't think he took his sister, who isn't mentioned in the first place, to my knowledge. I think he went and started some sort of a hybrid race, and probably in doing so began playing out the prophecy of the seed war, the biblical seed.
Yeah, no, I think this is what's going on, because you don't have Nimrod, who is the son of Cush. Cush was the son of, I believe, Canaan. Canaan was the son of Ham. I hope I got that completely right, but don't criticize me if I got that slightly wrong. But this is the lineage that comes after the flood, that is a spurious lineage that decides to revolt against what Noah and his other sons were to keep hold of, were to make sure that this new world after the flood does not return to the old. And well, that didn't happen, right? You had a third of the brothers fall and rebel once again. Where have we heard that from, right? We can see that in Revelation 12, where, the serpent, that great dragon, with his tail, drags a third of the stars with him, a third of the angels. And so, what I'm saying is there's just a meta narrative that connects to a story in the
Mhm.
Bible there. And so you had Nimrod, which was a king, a mighty man, who I believe was the highest degree of a mystic and sorcerer that was on the planet at that time. And I think it's because he had a direct connection with Marduk. And there's a lot of comparisons that people are making with Marduk being Satan.
Right.
Okay.
That would
Um,
be possibly the Assyrian. I just want to throw that
yeah.
out there. I
Yeah.
think that there's the big boy gods is probably all one god. That is probably the Satan. This is what I've
Mhm.
come to start to see, like Marduk, Zeus, Odin or Woden. I think that's the Assyrian. I think that is the Satan.
Right. Right.
I
Eh,
don't
eh,
want people to get it twisted when I say what I say about Lucifer. I just think that that's not the name for this thing. I think Satan is probably a better name. If people want to use Lucifer, that's fine. But I'm trying to get us more narrowed down to what's actually going on here and the real characters. And I think, yeah, you go back to that lineage of Cain. You've got Lamech or Enoch, Lamech, Tubal Cain, Lamech's kids, right? Were Tubal Cain, Jubal Cain, Nama.
The
And
masters of the seven sciences, if you think of
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely, because right around that time of Tubal-Cain, Lamech's kids, the legend is that they caught wind that the deluge was coming. They took all this knowledge that you're talking about, the knowledge of Cain that they acquired through this lineage, and sealed it in tablets and made records. And then also like sealed that into the ground. Like they created chambers. One of the legends says they created a chamber beneath the Great Pyramids, stored all their knowledge there so it could be retrieved after the flood. And this ties in with this in my opinion, this ties in with this or Nephilim thing where it says that they were in the days after the flood as well. It seems like they went and retrieved that
Yeah, yeah,
knowledge.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's how we still
Watch
know that there's the sacred sciences today.
yeah, and picture this. I love how we're having this conversation because we are making some connections here and people need to kind of pay attention. So with that, with the writings and the books that were held under the pyramid, again, these are like traditional stories. You know, it was known that there were 36,500 and something book. It's the amount of days throughout the year. Okay. That's so 36,500 and something books that were, kept secret. When you look at the Gnostic view, okay, you have the pleroma. The pleroma is like this heavenly realm. And then just underneath the pleroma, you have the archons. The archons would be like the angelic realm, if you wanted to compare it like biblical stuff. And then within the archons was created an entity known as Sophia. And this was one of the 12 archons, Sophia. Sophia accidentally created the demiurge. Okay. And according to Gnostics, the demiurge is the evil god in the Old Testament. Okay. This is the god that confounded us to the Garden of Eden. And, it is Lucifer who was sent by an Abraxas. This is the god Abraxas to the garden to liberate mankind from the bondage that the demiurge was holding onto mankind.
You
Okay.
know, something else I've seen, adding to what you're saying, uh, in some of those mystery school traditions and texts that I've read, they say, you know, who else, what's the word they used? Emanated the demiurge? Ishtar.
Wow.
Ishtar
See?
is who they believe emanated, whatever that means.
Right.
I
Right.
don't know
Right.
if it means created or if it's more complex than created, but
Right.
emanated the demiurge.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be very careful now going forward if I get on shows and I start talking about Proverbs 8, 9, about what I call wisdom, because I think I made a mistake by calling that Sophia.
Well, that's what the Gnostics, right? That's what you're saying. It's what the Gnostics cherry pick from the Bible to go, you know what, this is where they get philosophy, right?
Mhm.
This is where they get this wisdom from it. And obviously their agenda and their narrative is contrary to what a Christian would believe. So of course they would it's like the same reason why the fallen angels choose to emanate themselves as this female because it blasphemes the Holy Spirit. So it's kind of like natural for a Gnostic to cherry pick something out of the Bible and use it in a way to blaspheme the Holy Spirit.
Sure,
You know
sure.
what I'm
And I
saying?
know, yeah, you sent me a clip of Gary Wayne saying, I think exactly that in
Yes,
so many
yes.
words or less. Yeah, I'm warming up to it. I see what you're saying.
Well, it's like a personification, it's like how is this used in scripture and why is it being used in this way? There's like there's interpretation and discernment that kind of
Mhm.
plays into that and stuff. But I wanted to mention
Well,
something
I do
about
think there's a
yeah.
degree of deception here. Is it full blown blasphemy? I don't know. I don't know, man. That's a tough word. It's a
Hmm.
very complex word. But yeah, I'm not going to get hung up on it because I see your point, and you're onto something.
Gotcha. And you know what's crazy about the 36,500 books, right? That was written by the spurious lineage. Is that Abraxas through I forget it's what's that numerical value to letters it starts with
Gematria.
gematria. Okay.
Oh yeah, trust me. We
I-
get the gematria people in the
right. Well,
comments.
Abraxas actually adds up to 365. And so what's funny is that the Gnostics believe that that's why they have 365 days of the year. And what's also interesting with Abraxas is it's a chicken head
Yeah,
with
that's the
two
chicken
serpent legs.
snake god. Yeah.
Snake god, yeah. So that's where and this Abraxas is the god of the pleroma. It's like the biggest entity of their theology. And it just that's why I kind of am like, man, I think this was the serpent's religion to teach man so that they would go, because in the end, it's so funny how, how Satan can work, and you can understand it as multiple beings because it's just a title, right? But or you can, or maybe one, whatever, pick and choose. But in the end of it, I think that why this religion was created out of the garden, and to a certain lineage, was because it was for the end. It was for Mystery Babylon. So when that Maitreya does come, that third Buddha, whatever you want to call it, Maitreya of Shambhala, when they do bring heaven to earth with this metaphysical realm where the physical can now interact with this is the whole point of creating this Mystery Babylon, because it's going to fit in with it just like a puzzle, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be conditioned, and they're going to easily adapt to it.
Yeah. I'm starting to see that too. There does seem to be two factions here. It's the seed war. There's for a war to have a war, you have to have two warring factions. There's two, I think that what goes along with that is two sets of knowledge. Um, Adam had his version and Cain took that and made it his version and it split off. And I think you see that even down to the tablets. You know, Paracelsus talked about how after the flood, Shem and Ham, Noah's sons, went to go retrieve tablets that they had also stored underground beneath a mountain, beneath Mount Ararat. So there seems to be two versions, it's like the forest, right? There's a light side and a dark side. Not to be too cheesy here, but that's what it
Right. Well,
kind of
dude, that's
seems like the more I dive into the seed war. But and then you've got the goddess faction of this. It's like even down to Abraxas almost like as you're telling me, as because I've seen Abraxas, so I got the mental picture of it. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh man, that's kind of like Melusine. Melusine's got the snake legs. She doesn't have a chicken face. She's if people want to know, everybody has a mental picture of Melusine, whether you know it or not. Just think about the Starbucks logo. Those are
yes.
two snake legs, right? It's
Yes,
kind of
and
like
look what's on her
Abraxas.
head. A
Yeah,
crown, you
crown.
know? And if I could just kind of break this down, because everyone's like Babylon. Well, we're talking about Babylon of the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 11, right, where this was conducted by Nimrod. Nimrod united the world, he created balance, and he also gave the ability for each and every one to almost get to the point to where anything that they imagined they were going to be able to do. So how would this even be possible? Well, the only way it was possible was with the Tower of Babel. And people think today that the Tower of Babel, whatever, however you want to pronounce it, is a tower. And I personally am starting to think otherwise, that it was not a tower, but it was more or less a pyramid of some sort. It was the piece of technology that was going to be able to manipulate the metaphysical world, and or use the metaphysical world to manipulate the subphysical. And so before I kind of continue into what I'm about to say, I want to just lay three things out on the table so people can understand the rest of this whole thing. The physical realm is something that our realm is broken up into two things, okay, with one that is just adjacent to it. Okay, so it's a total of three, but the two realms work together. Okay. And then there's a threshold that's in between the third. So in the first realm, you have the physical realm, and this is something that we can see. This is something that we can grab. It's objective. I don't need any tools to be able to know that it's real right in front of me. The sub-physical is smaller. It's what the naked eye can't see, but we know it exists. And the way that we know it exists is because we use the physical realm to look and see the subphysical. For example, a microscope or an electron microscope. We can know that we can see red blood cells, microorganisms, disease. We can see these things, that they actually exist and they're a part of our two physical realms here. Well, then there's a third realm, and this realm is the metaphysical. And the metaphysical is a realm that we can't see, but it does exist. And there's really no tools yet to be able to break that threshold to access the metaphysical realm to manipulate the subphysical. Well, Stephen, what do you mean by manipulate? Okay, so the physical realm that we have now can manipulate the subphysical. For example, the best example is medication. You take a pill, you can see it, and what it does is it manipulates the subphysical realm on a microorganism level. Okay, like there's things that affect our receptor sites in our body that I mean you can barely see with an electron microscope. There are things that can work with the body on such a small level that it's being manipulated. So that's kind of what I mean. So what the ancients were doing, what the magi's, the sorcerers, magics, witchcraft, what they are really good at doing is using the metaphysical to manipulate the subphysical. They're using this energy, this power. I think it's spirits that are conducting a lot of these things, but they're using these things to be able to do things in the physical world. Like, and especially if
Hmm.
you want to like catch on to people really doing this, go look at Eastern mysticism or go look at
Absolutely.
Eastern religion, and you will see people, doing these things.
Yeah,
It's
they're
Dragon Ball Z.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and Star Wars, right? Just manipulate the force. It's
They're creating a fireball, in
oh,
their
I like that.
hands,
Hmm.
and they're
Well,
they're using it to do things.
yes, they are working with the spirit world. They're working with spirits, and in my opinion, of course, and prophecy too, because I think prophecy, like the seed war, is just baked into the spirit world. So they had to kind of work within the framework of a prophecy that's been laid out. This is a new thing I'm starting to catch on to. It's like, why did the Zoroaster astrologer alchemist guys know where to find baby Jesus? They weren't Christians, they were
Right.
occultists.
Hmm.
Well, they knew the prophecy and they knew how to read the stars and they knew how to channel spirits probably as well. So you put all that together and they're able to travel through the desert and find a child in a manger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they
And
were able
it's
to also be used for good too, because they didn't turn him over to Herod, I believe it was. Herod wanted to kill. Herod was threatened by the coming of this king, so they
hmm
allowed Jesus to escape as a child.
right.
But they were still
Right.
occultists.
Right. Right.
They were
And
working
I
with this
think
prophecy and the
I
spirit
think
world, I think.
Yeah, and I think Nimrod was the greatest occultist that ever lived, and I also think that the Antichrist, the Maitreya, the whatever you want to call it, they're going to also be the greatest occultists of all time, because it also says biblically that he comes with the power and the works of Satan. Satan's helping this person do these things. And what's interesting, getting into Nimrod and why he had the tower, I believe it was a pyramid because this pyramid had capabilities of exploiting the metaphysical to manipulate the subphysical. A quick example of this is the story of Moses and Aaron going in front of Pharaoh, and Moses casts his staff down on the ground, and through the power of God, the miracle that took place there, his staff turned into a snake. Well, the magi's of the Pharaoh, the two of them, they casted their staffs down as well, and they also turned into snakes. So this power is possible. And what's really fascinating is I think that is that my dog? Do you hear that?
No, I don't hear
Okay, okay. Cool. He's snoring and having a dream right now.
it. Wow.
um but Nimrod was using this tower, this pyramid, okay, as some sort of manipulation, I think. And it's very similar to kind of like what we're doing today with CERN. I think what they're doing with CERN is they're trying to manipulate the subphysical to access the metaphysical, to break that threshold that's sitting there. And I think with the world coming together, the world uniting, the world being perfectly balanced under his oppression, it was only giving this even more potential to access this metaphysical realm. If you think of the word Babel, it's really a lot of scholars say that this means gateway to the gods, right? So if they were able to access that realm once again, this is why anything that they imagined would become possible. And I think why God destroyed this was because that would have been the ultimate. And this is crazy because I don't think this is possible, but this is what God says in the Bible, that they were going to be able to do anything they wanted to do. And I
Yeah.
think what they were wanting to do was to ultimately destroy that other lineage completely off the face of the earth. So if God didn't go down there and destroy the tower and also confound the language of the people and disperse them, there was going to be no chance that Christ was to be born into the world.
Yeah, right. And I think that part of them receiving this information and this knowledge to build something like this in the first place is coming down through these other entities. I remember you and I talked once and we got into Nebuchadnezzar, and we found that Nebuchadnezzar was building temples to Ishtar and was very dedicated to that worship. In fact, he was going there after battle to leave, you know, uh, to leave offerings. That's the word, offerings for her. And we also found that Ishtar, this goddess, divine feminine thing, was also coming to his wife in dreams. Speaking of dreams,
Wild, dude.
and giving them information. So I think that that's how some of this is like perpetrated. It's not just Satan anymore. Like there's a Satan, like I said, like I think we've established that. But there's also this strange goddess figure that nobody wants to touch. It's too weird for some people to go there, but it factors in. It's like goddess world order, man. Like it's huge. It's
Hmm.
they're the sky beings that are across the ancient world everywhere. It's the ancient Semitic had El, then they had Asherah, queen of heaven.
Hmm.
The Incas had what they call her, Chaska Collier, and it's a personification of the planet Venus. It's a
Right.
star. It's like it looks just like Ostara in the depictions, who's the Norse version of Asherah. The Burmese, the Inuits, the Iroquois, they all have this goddess figure, and it's like Akathaso, Akasak, Akahinzik. It's the same word, just kind of tweaked a little bit across all these different cultures. So I just wanted to throw that in. They're sky goddesses, and I think there's just one, but they're
And
named differently.
I think that goddess is the energy that is the ether. If we're trying to think of how there's a false trinity out there, I think that the Father is Abraxas, it's the Pleroma, it's way outside of our creation. And again, this is not my theology. And I believe what they also are into is this goddess, but the goddess serves as the Holy Spirit, which is more of like this energy. And because I'm talking more or less about like Hinduism and Buddhism and Eastern mysticism right now, and they believe that the divine feminine is this energy, right? And for the sun portion, they believe that there's multiple suns, okay, and that they believe that Jesus Christ was the first Buddha. Buddha came after him, and then that third Buddha is that Maitreya. It's almost like the sun to them is this physical God man in the flesh. you know
Ra.
it- yeah,
It's like
yeah,
Ra.
yeah. And this goes back to Babylon, right? Because you have Nimrod, who would be considered the sun god, right? And then you have Semiramis, his wife, who would be considered the moon god, the goddess. And then you have their son, which is Tammuz. But this is kind of how the process of their their family was all kind of dismantled, but then this is the story behind it. So Nimrod died, okay, and then a beam of light from the sun immaculately uh you know created Tammuz in Semiramis. Okay, there was this immaculate conception that took place from the sun beam,
Mm.
and this is where when she delivered Tammuz, Tammuz then became the reincarnation of Nimrod. And this is where we get the ancient Osiris ritual. This is why actually we have a dome and an obelisk, because the sunbeam actually shines off of the top of the obelisk onto the belly of the dome to signify that immaculate conception. And I really think that that's why Christ was also, well, I think that's why, and I don't believe it was an immaculate conception, by the way. I think this was just their story to really exalt themselves and to deify themselves, and to deify Semiramis, because she became the queen of Babylon. She became that goddess that everyone started to worship. I think that why God came and the virgin birth of Mary, it was because it was like another checkmate move against the little g gods, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
sure, yeah. Is Tammuz also Demuzi? I think I've heard that's the same.
Tammuz I'm trying to remember where he was mentioned in the Bible. I'm not sure if it was
Yeah,
Jeremiah or Ezekiel.
I think it's in one of the two. I don't remember. I've read it, and it was probably in Ezekiel, but Tammuz, yeah, it's Ezekiel 28 now that I'm thinking about it. I think
Okay.
mentions Tammuz or Demuz. I think Demuzi,
Ezekiel 8:14, when the women in the
uh,
temple mourned Tammuz,
yes, it's I think it's in
which was a
another
fertility ritual
verse.
tied to the goddess Ishtar, and then God condemns that.
Yes, exactly, because that's what I was about to say next. It's Dumuzi was said to be Ishtar's lover.
Yeah, and
Hold
that's
on a
crazy because
second,
that's the
man. What? So what is that? Is it Ezekiel 8?
yeah, I believe so. That's what I got here.
All right, hold on. That's crazy. I didn't see that Ishtar connection coming at all. What
It's
chapter?
Inanna
Or
and Ishtar. Yeah,
8.
it's the Mesopotamian culture, I believe.
Okay, it's 8:14. Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord. Women were sitting there weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, "Have you seen this, O mortal? You will still see greater abominations than these." And yeah, there's more to it, of course. This is some sort of a temple where they are doing what would be considered abominations.
Right.
Yeah,
You,
this is
you know what's
wild.
interesting too? What I found out digging deep into that research of Tammuz and the Mesopotamians, and why the women were doing this to that divine feminine. Because they wanted their god to come back. Well, they do it for 40 days. They weep to Tammuz for 40 days. Do you know what else does something for 40 days, but is a different religion? I don't hold on. I don't think it's a different religion, what I'm about to say. I think it's just rebranded and it's reformulated with a completely different uniform. And what the Catholics do for 40 days is Lent. And Lent is where you actually give up something of yourself. A lot of people consider fasting, where they do this for 40 days, in order to get benefit from it. And
Hmm.
whenever you see something, when someone's doing some sort of ritual to their god in order to get some sort of benefit from it, it just reminds me of the same things of what was done to Baal, what was done to Moloch, what was done to all of these other gods, where they would
Hmm.
they would they would sacrifice something either of themselves, personally, or something, I mean, of their children as well are involved in this to receive a better outcome afterwards, if that makes
Sure.
any sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. So tell me the Ishtar connection to Tammuz one more time.
So Ishtar is the divine feminine, and The divine feminine goes all the way back to Semiramis, which is the wife of Nimrod. Tammuz is the son of Semiramis, where where Tammuz is now the reincarnation of Nimrod.
So yeah, they're one of the legends of Ishtar and Nana with Dumuzi is interesting because it was all the way down in South Africa and Botswana. And there's an area there called Sedillo Hills, Mountain of the Gods.
Mm-hmm.
All the lore in the area has to do with these entities coming down and revealing things to men, humankind. And the a lot of the petroglyphs in the area, rock carvings, sort of mirror that and everything. But it's also the area where it's said that Ishtar buried Dumuzi. Something happened
Mm.
to him and he died, and she buried him in Botswana.
Hmm.
And it's such a wild thing because I don't know if we're going to get into this today. I'd like to at some point and see how this relates to the UFO topic, because that Botswana case is one where you start to think, how are these things getting around to all these different cultures? Because South Africa is a long way from Nineveh and Babylon and some of these other places where this entity was said to be appearing to people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. The more I started looking into the sky goddess, the more I started to see the UFO thing, the
Well,
lights in the sky.
it well in Exodus and Deuteronomy, when Moses is saying, "Don't worship the sun, the moon, and the stars." Nimrod is the sun, the moon is Semiramis, and the stars is Tammuz. And what I'm thinking is, with this kind of, because there's like a UFO religion that's kind of coming, but what I see is I think we're just revisiting those days of Babylon where people are starting to catch on to where they're manipulating the metaphysical to appear in the subphysical, if that makes any sense. And there's these things happening in the sky. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It's supernatural, and it's something, you see this especially with the Chris and the Ryan Bledsoes, where, or even just CE5 programs, Stephen Greer, and so on and so forth. But there's these meditation groups that are actually manipulating the metaphysical to come into the subphysical
Mhm.
through a lot of these different kinds of mystery Babylon religious practices,
Oh,
in my
they're
opinion.
total spin-offs. And it's hard to get people to sort of see that or admit to it, especially the people who are involved in such practices. They don't see it. But I've seen it through research, and it's like you're right on, man. Like one of the CE5, there was a guy who came on who showed me a picture that was snapped at one of Greer's CE5 sessions. They're sitting around, they're meditating, they're doing this practice of CE5. And there's an apparition that's flying around, and they take a picture of it, and it looks identical to lamb,
Jeez.
to Aleister Crowley's lamb. It's more, I know people say, oh, lamb looks like a gray alien. Sure, kind of. No, this thing looks like Lamb. It is Lamb. Lamb is the cartoon version of what was caught on camera at one of Greer's CE5 thing. And it's wild. It's got the big head. It's got the same vein down the forehead and all that. And it makes me wonder, like, yeah, it's spot on. Was this is this intelligence what I'm gonna get real crazy here, right? Is this what buzzed the White House in 1952?
Dude. I mean,
Because
well,
uh,
I think this is gonna
they
bring
say
us
that
into it.
Eisenhower, had some sort of a pact with whatever that was, and I don't think it was aliens anymore. I'm sorry. If that's real, I'm pretty sure that what he made contact with is the same entity that George Washington made contact with when he had the vision of the lady.
Well,
And
picture this, right? So we're gonna get into,
and Columbus, whenever
some
he October 12th
yeah.
made that thing. It's the same John D. Daughters of Fortitude. I could
Yep.
keep What's it called, Isaiah's revelation from the Templars in 1226 AD. Same entity that has appeared to all these people, man. So if Eisenhower made a pact with anything, my money's on that. So
Yeah.
sorry, man.
No,
I just
you're
want to
no,
get that
because
out.
yes, and I apologize for
Well, we
interrupting,
could
but
keep we could keep going with that too, because I think at some point these entities will come forward and say, well, we are the aliens, and we've had this understanding with your government since the 50s, because that's when 1952 is when something happened at the White House. It's documented. You can look into it. Something was flying around out there that wasn't necessarily human. And there's this entity, going back to what you said about these other spin-off Mystery Babylon traditions. Um, there was an entity that was being summoned by George Van Tassel in 1947 in the Mojave Desert. He doesn't know Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. They're also in the Mojave Desert, led there, and they get in touch with an entity who says, "I'm the goddess Babylon." And
yeah.
then so this entity comes to same entity that John Dee talked to, same one George Washington talked to, same ones the Templars talked to in 1200, where she said, "Hey, build me a temple. I'm Ishtar. Build me a temple. I will come and speak to you." She tells Jack Parsons, "This is what you do. You build an altar for me, and I'll come and talk to you." She tells him how to build the altar, what to put on the plate, all the details. She says, "I'm Babylon, goddess Babylon." At the same time, in the same desert, unbeknownst to both parties, George Van Tassel is being led out there. He leaves his job at Lockheed, I think it was, and moves his family out in the middle of the desert and starts a UFO cult. And he says, "I'm talking to an entity named Ashtar. We're going to call this the Ashtar Command." And today, 2025, the Bledsoes are calling her the lady. And if in fact they're specifying it now, because if you go to Ryan Bledsoe's podcast, one of the last episodes he dropped is called The Goddess, and he literally says it's Ishtar.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And the Gnostics believed it was Sophia.
I'm
You know,
starting to warm up to that.
yeah. And what's crazy is how about in 1973 when Claude Vorilhon, this was a Frenchman who was with mind speak, was told to go out into a dormant volcano out in central France. And when he went there, he actually had an interaction with a bell shaped UFO that descended from the sky, and a little green, uh, basically alien, which resembles exactly what we know as today as little grays, that had long hair and almond shaped eyes. And he was told to bring a Bible with him. When he brought this Bible, they took him onto his ship. They flied him out for 6 days, surfing basically the universe until they got to their home planet. And when they got to their home planet, they were sexually liberated beings, where pretty much they didn't have anything that was confounding them to sexual morality. And the way that they knew this was, or the way Claude actually spotted this, they told him, but the way he spotted it physically was he saw that they did not wear any clothing. There was no need for clothes. So we can see some Garden of Eden similarities here. Now, the one thing that they told him was very similar. Okay, I'm going to make two connections here to what you were saying about this feminine entity telling and instructing very renowned men of our history to build things. Well, these entities, they told him that he needs to go back to earth and go to the governments and the kingdoms of the world and tell them to unite and to build a headquarters for them. And this headquarters would be their landing pad. This headquarters would be where they would reside, and that when he comes back to Earth, that he also needs to get mankind to develop into a higher conscious level, okay, or a higher vibration, if you want to call it, to where now the world would be conditioned and be primed and be ready once this landing pad, this building, this headquarters, this embassy per se would be built, and that humanity would be elevated consciously, that then they would come back and reveal themselves. But the biggest thing that I found in this research is that these entities that Claude described them, he never drew a picture of them because they said, number one, not to draw a picture of them, which is funny because they know that their their characteristics got leaked by Aleister Crowley, and that got around the world very quickly. I think that's why they told him not to draw what they look like. But Claude also described them to be so feminine that the women on Earth were 10% of the femininity that they were. So
We're
you
on
had
to
these
something.
feminine entities that were saying to go and build this embassy. And so Claude Vorilhon, which was given the name Rael, he went to Israel and he went to their government and their um, political cabinet and pretty much told them, "Hey, you need to build the embassy here." Now it's official story that the government of Israel totally neglected his proposal, and they're not involved with it whatsoever. But Claude claims that this embassy and this place for them to come dwell, he believed it to be the third temple.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're on to something here, man. And I wanted to pull up a quote here real quick from that podcast. I've got no problems with the Bledsoes, by the way. I'm not, I see things a little bit differently than them. This is not a hit piece on them. I think some of the information they're putting out there is actually accurate. I just don't agree with their theology. But this is the quote. Brian Bledsoe said the UFOs answer to the lady. You can think of them like angels in her army. That sounds to me like the quote unquote aliens are creations of these entities that are going around and doing the bidding. And this goes back to your point earlier, Babylon and Nineveh. And I want to include Nineveh in there too, because I think that's an important piece of the puzzle here. Guess who started the cities? According to the legend, the Assyrian started the cities of Babylon and Nineveh. Mysterious figure who's mentioned in the Bible, the Assyrian. So there's a male Satan figure associated with this as well. But some of the stuff is also being ran by Ishtar, apparently. It's complex because we haven't been taught any of this. But like I said, I think the Assyrian is this Wotan, Zeus, Marduk character, same entity. And I think what's going to happen here is that the blue beam or whatever, the contact is going to be, they're going to come at some point. I don't know what form they're going to come, but if they come, they're going to come and they're going to have a message for humanity. And what I foresee happening there is they're going to tell us that they're good, they're on our side, and that Jehovah is the bad one. It's the exact same thing that they told. It's the exact same thing they told the Templars hundreds of years ago. Bledsoe even reads out an old Templar tradition where they say that. They say, build us the temples to build me a temple and I'll come visit you. I'm Ishtar. Jehovah's the bad one. There's a war happening here against evil, and Jehovah is Satan or something like that. So, but he's telling you exactly what's up. It's just the theology is backwards. The good guy is the bad guy in
Right,
his
right. Well,
version.
and I'll tell you what, just to illustrate it for the audience, the demiurge to them is Thanos.
Mm,
And so when you look at the Marvel movies and the
hmm.
Avengers movies, these things are going to come here and they're going to declare war against someone, right? If especially Gary Wayne talks about New World Order Gnosticism. If this is a New World Order Gnosticism, which I definitely think it is, then their enemy will be the demiurge. And the demiurge will be what they will go to war with in the end times, if that makes any sense. The Battle of Armageddon. You know what I'm
Sure,
saying?
sure.
It just depends what team you want to be on for that.
And I'll add something to that before I forget. there's a part in that transcript where uh, I went and I found this online. It's a real Templar legend. It's not a legend. It's like documentation of something that happened to these Templars. They were documenting a vision that they had, much like John Dee and the other guy did, whatever his blanking on his name now. But John Dee and his helper did that in the 1500s with the Daughter of Fortitude. You can go and read that too. But what she told the Templars in 1226 is, "I'll be back in around 1,000 years for the golden age."
That's the utopia that the Raelians want to be created, so then they come back. That is the Tower of Babel. And you asked me, hey, when you come on the show, is there a way you can connect, what we talked about last podcast with this podcast? Well, the technologies that we discussed in the last show that we had together, that is the forbidden fruit. That is what will make you like gods, to connect you to the metaphysical realm. That will be the Tower of Babel. That will be that piece of technology that will get rid of that threshold that's in between the subphysical and the metaphysical. Because they want to have union with us. You have to understand that too. The reason why these aliens want to come back, these fallen angels, these entities, these principalities, why they want to bring themselves back into the pictures, because they want to reunite with mankind once again, like they did in the in the antediluvian period. They want to bring back that sexual union, in my opinion, and also could be other kinds of unions. But they want to do that because once they have that ability, and once that plan's conquered, now there can be an army to go to war with the demiurge, with the God of the Bible. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know.
I'm happy that to be here and having this conversation with you, man. And I'm happy to see that this thing has sort of blown up a little bit, um, because that tells me that people are going to be a little bit more receptive to hearing this. And I know how crazy all this sounds. Trust me, I do. I didn't even want to talk about any of this in the first place, back when I started. But I've talked about it, like I said, on and off for about a year now. And you know what's interesting, which I'm probably about to jinx it right now, but not once has anybody said, no, he's wrong, or no, he's crazy, or no, he's not right. Not one. I've had zero pushback from this. I've had people I could tell did not believe me at all, but nobody has come out and said no to this. And I think that that's interesting, you know. And this is not about being right for me. I'm trying to do right because I think this information needs to be put out there. And I think it's very hard to fathom because it's something like a movie, but
Yeah.
it for real, it's like the Ninth Gate or like the Mummy or
Yeah.
Ghostbusters. It's almost exactly like the entities in those movies.
Yeah.
Those are like depictions of a reality, I think.
Right.
And
Right.
you remember Ghostbusters, the lady's on top of the building and she's been inhabited by another entity, and she's goddess like, and like she's acting weird, and she's got like a beast. She takes on the Mystery Babylon aesthetic.
And what was coming into the world? What was coming into the world were the things of the metaphysical. It was a gate, man. You know,
So gate for sure is.
it
And
was a
you've
gate.
got the right iconography here, because Mystery Babylon, the goddess Babylon, is often said to be she who rides the beast. That's what Parsons said. He saw the lady, the goddess, riding the beast. And you see that in that movie. You've got the goddess and the beast,
Yeah.
and they're taking over New York City.
And the only way this is possible is if the world unites. And these are the two
Mm,
things that shout antichrist: is it's balance and it's unity. And if you have both of these things in the same pan together, cooking up, I mean, I would run for the hills if there's anything that is trying to lure you in when it's talking about unity and balance, in my opinion. But it's almost like you need the world to come together. It's almost like in the Avengers movie. It's like when Captain America is like, Avengers, assemble. It's like you have the power of all the people coming together. That's what will give the power to the other forces to have a will to go to war against God.
Hmm.
you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
There's an army against it. And you mentioned this in one of the shows, and I mentioned this to Gary Wayne. I told him about you. And I said that you brought up on the show one time, you're like, if we're dealing with principalities, these are princes. And what princes don't have armies? Princes have armies. Um, and they do the will of, the prince or the king or whatever, these soldiers,
It's a
you know what I'm
host.
saying?
It's the
Yeah.
host. God has his host, the heavenly host, and then I think some of these other entities have their host as well. And these aren't armies of men. This is like the mummy.
Yeah.
There's an
Seriously, dude.
army of things that aren't human that go, that answer the beckoning call. And I was thinking about another quote here, just to sort of maybe hammer out the reality of this a little bit more. I've heard Ryan Bledsoe say that the CIA came to their family and said, "Yeah, we know about the lady. We know all about the lady. We want to know, what does she want?" And I just thought that that was pretty crazy, because
It's kind of cryptic.
I think some people in our government are very aware of this situation. They've got this guy named Tim. I don't remember his last name, but there's this mysterious guy named Tim that he's like the government esoteric guy who handles the UFO matters. Diana Pasalka and everybody talks about this guy on the podcast. They always kind of
Mm.
allude to him. He's kind of an enigma. I looked him up. He's a real guy, though. But basically, there's these people in our government, in our military, who know what these are, and that they aren't aliens, and that they're ancient entities, some of whom are literally mentioned in the Bible. And I think they acknowledge that too. They said that they've been tracking this entity for a long time. So they've been looking in the ancient texts. What does she want? It seems to be the government's concern. And
Yeah.
I have this reel saved, and it's a remote viewer saying that CERN opened a portal and talked to the aliens, and they're very tall and they come in peace, right? And it's the same thing I was told by somebody who had a DMT trip. And last time I talk about Ryan Bledsoe, guys, sorry, but I heard him also say on that podcast, he's like, "Oh, I've seen this in DMT trip." That people were basically saying they're not all seeing the machine elves. They're seeing a tall god or goddess like figure that looks like us, essentially. Going back to some of the things I said earlier in the show, I think that the human model is made after something that existed before us. I think that these things have a humanoid form, like arms, legs, and I think that we just look like them, but just not as shimmery, I guess. I don't know, but that, judging by what I've heard from the DMT trips from several people, that this ancient goddess has come to them on the trip. And one of the guys I talked to said that every time he took DMT, he talked to the same entity, and that she was tall and majestic, and kind of like a marvel to be around. And he told me her name. He's like, "I got her name." And he told me the name, and I'm like, "Hey, have you ever heard that name before?" I asked him that. He's like, "No." I was like, "I have. I've seen it in the ancient text. It's an old Norse goddess,
Mm.
an old Frisian goddess is who he was talking to, for best I can tell.
And I think this
Sky
goddess attacked me
goddesses."
in my sleep, man.
Oh yeah, let's get to that. The experience. That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I think this is very real.
I do, and that actually made it even more real.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, so
Oh yeah.
it's been about a couple of weeks now, maybe 3 weeks, since I've been really researching Mystery Babylon, the feminine divine goddess, everything that I can about the whole situation. And I obviously knew that these entities, they know what I'm doing, they know what I'm trying to expose. They're onto me as well as I am onto them. And so, I was in this. I went to bed, and it wasn't even late. no drinking, nothing that would affect any of my conscious state, and no horror movies in the past 6 months, dude. I mean, I don't really watch horror movies. And so I'm in this dream, and in this dream, it felt like a dream, but you know what's crazy is it also kind of felt like I was pulled into this astral realm to where I was in a very unfamiliar area, but I was in their home field, if that makes any sense. I was in their
Mhm.
dominion, their home, you know, stadium. If that if that made their crowd was for them. That's just kind of like what it felt like. So I'm in the corner of this room, and everything's dark around me, and there's just a spotlight on me. And I know that all I can see is around 5 to 10 feet in front of me with this spotlight, and I know that there's something in front of me. It's evil, it's pure evil, and it hates me, but I can't see it yet. It hasn't revealed itself yet. So the spotlight starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger to where now the light kind of radiates a little bit outward to where it kind of lights up everything very, very misty in a way. And so I'm looking and I can see this shadow figure in front of me, and I'm like, that's what I felt looking at me. There it is. I'm just waiting. Come on now. What's taking you so long? And so then it becomes bright. Um, Not the whole room, but it becomes lit up. And where they're at, they step forward and they're wearing a white gown. And it's a mixture of the grudge, the ring, and the exorcist, like chick, right? It's a girl. I know because their hair is black and it's kind of hanging over their face, and all you can kind of see is like the little peak of their nose. And I just knew this thing was about to just attack me, and this is what I felt. And so all of a sudden, when I engaged with it consciously and it locked back into me, there was just a blast of air that was kind of shooting past them to to be able to blow their hair backwards. And as this happened, they were screaming at me, and it was like a screech, dude. It was a terrifying screaming noise, um, and almost like chalk, nails on a chalkboard type deal. And I'm looking at their face, and their eyes are like yellow, and their face is all cut up. It looks like the Exorcist girl, kind of. And I was just terrified, dude. I mean, I was terrified, right? And when I had the feeling of it coming towards me, it actually did. It flipped around on its back and it started to crab walk towards me, and its
Oh,
head and its neck and its tongue were hanging out, and it was terrifying me, dude. I was terrified. I couldn't move in the dream. I was just backed up against a corner. And so my wife wakes me up out of this dream. Godly woman wakes me up out of this dream, saves me from this crazy, which I believe to be the divine feminine. And what my wife said is she said that I was screaming and I was being tormented in my sleep. I was moaning, groaning, and I was screaming with my mouth closed. If that makes
mhm.
any sense. And so she woke me up. She was on top of me. My kid woke up. I mean, everyone got up. And I told my wife, I was like, I was just being attacked by a demon. And it didn't hit me till a couple of days later. Then that's when I called you, and I was like, brother, I think I just had an experience from this feminine goddess trying to attack me in my sleep, trying to scare me to stop going down the rabbit hole that I'm going down.
Yeah, it's almost like, okay, you know about me. All right. You're against me. Okay. You're going to see, it's almost like you're going to see my true form then. I'm not going to put
Oh
on a
man.
facade for you because I've read other versions of this divine feminine coming to people. And they do. They talk about the wind, a wind blowing the hair
Are
back.
you serious? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
getting chills, dude.
But they're seeing a beautiful, they describe her as like a woman, womanly, but also girlish, like a young woman who is all dressed up and done up in like a nice dress that shows a form of a a thin lady. I think thin and supple is one of the uh, things I've read, and that there's a wind blowing the hair back, and that also she has some sort of a headpiece on that usually has that harvest moon, the upside down, like they look like horns, but it's a moon. But it's a beautiful version. It's a beautiful, calming version. It's almost like you got uh the version that's like, okay, you wanna know who I am, you wanna be against me, I'll scare you off or something.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, man. Um, and it didn't hit me until a couple days later. I was like, because I'm researching the divine feminine, and I remembered my dream, and I was like, oh my
Mm.
goodness, that's it. That that's that's what I'm investigating. And it came into my space. Like what? And then it also, made me think of your show where people have had this interaction with this entity in dreams, visions, I mean a lot of them are dreams. And so I made that connection to the source as well, and it made me think that something like you're saying, where this was the form of its organic state, and it can take any form it wants. It wants to be perceived to people, in a certain way purposely. If that makes any
Yeah,
sense.
well, of course, yeah, so that's because 'cause we're human, and a lot of people don't even believe that there's ghosts or a spirit world or other entities and stuff like that. So what often happens when these people have visions of the lady, it changes them. They they want to build shrines to her and worship her and all this and that. It has that effect on people. So I think they know, like, if they come to you in a glorious form, they're going to blow your mind, and you're going to be more prone to worship them.
You're blowing me away with the moon thing, dude. This goes back to Semiramis,
Mm,
the moon god, the crescent over the top, right?
mhm.
Which can probably be related to something maybe pertaining to fertility, maybe because we
Yeah.
know that the moon is a cycle, 28 days, and it could have something to do with all that.
The Egyptians often depicted Isis with that headpiece on. It's I've heard it described as horns, but it looks like a harvest moon to me, or whatever, the a moon that's totally tilted on its bottom or whatever. It's hard to describe, but yeah, I think that this is something that has been coming to these occultists throughout the ages, and I honestly think some of those occultists opened the door for a lot of this. Crowley being one of them. I'm thinking about, so you've got the Lamb. Crowley talks about two main entities that he saw. One is Lamb. That's the thing that I believe they saw at the CE5 thing. But also, what's the other one from Egypt? Iowas. He talked about Iowas in Egypt coming to him, and that sort of prompted him to write the Book of the Law. And you look into what the descriptions of what Crowley saw, because he documented that. He had a vision as well, and he saw a man, and he said he looked like the Assyrian. So there's that Assyrian guy again, right? Perhaps,
Yeah.
but also, what does he write after? He comes up with Thelema, which I
Mhm.
think is based on the goddess Babylon. So there you have, it looks to be Crowley working with possibly the Assyrian and the goddess. You see that combo again there. So
Yeah. I mean, picture this too. Like, I have annual passes to Disney. Disney's a very occultic place, and it's very esoteric in its architecture and also its symbolism. Me and my wife, we go to Animal Kingdom, and in Animal Kingdom, there's a section of it that's called Pandora. Pandora, the movie, which is it's based off of the movie Avatar, which is James Cameron film, I believe. But that movie is all based off of Hindu religion. It's based off of Eastern mysticism, and in this ride, it's a very simple ride. You get on a boat and you go through this little creek that takes you around, and there's all these animatronics all around you, and you're on the planet Pandora. And when you get towards the end, there is a female goddess that is the Magi in the movie, who is an avatar. She's the divine feminine. She is the wife to the husband who leads the clan of the avatar. So her husband's Nimrod, she is Semiramis, and their child is Tammuz. So what I'm basically getting at is she's sitting in front of what's called the tree of life. That's a part of the movie, but the tree of life is called Awas.
Mm.
It's literally called Awa. Okay, I mean, but it's called Awa with an E, but it's EIASS. So it's Awas. If you, it's like the it's same but different, but still same.
Yeah.
you know and what she's doing is she's doing this kundalini movement, where she's like full kundalini, eyes are closed, and this is an animatronic that is like $35 million, by the way. And she's singing a wah a wah. And so I find that very fascinating. Plus awa was, like you said, right, it was an angel, guardian angel, right?
It had, he said it,
According to Lamb. I
uh
mean, according to
Crowley.
Aleister Crowley, yeah.
Yeah, Aowa was a male, but he was dressed up in Middle Eastern garb, specifically the type of garb that they wore for thousands of years in Assyria. So that's why he called him the Assyrian. And they said, yeah, he does make some remarks that you could conclude that this was angelic like.
Hmm.
It
You
had
know
that.
what's you know what's another connection with all this is, the only time Lucifer is mentioned in the Bible, which is in Isaiah. And yes, the word Lucifer was done through the Latin Vulgate, and this is where, Isaiah is writing, "Oh Lucifer, you know, son of the morning," which is a direct correlation with the planet that we know as today's Venus. Venus
Right.
being also a divine feminine goddess.
Yes. Yeah. It's so I got it here. It's Isaiah 14. And yes, like Steven said, obviously, if you haven't picked up on it, I've got a little pet peeve with the word Lucifer. I kind of reserve the right to think that it's possibly a psyop just because of a Latin guy who decided to add that in, as it's a descriptive word like Satan. So, I think it should be looked at as such if you're going to use it. But like it says, how are you fallen from heaven, O day star, O son of dawn? How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, and I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount. I will sit on the mount of assembly on the heights of Zaphon. I will ascend to the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High, but you are brought down to Sheol in the depths of the pit. So there's seems like it's sort of referencing a judgment or a coming judgment on this entity. Now, and so you can see there, my version does not say Lucifer at all. So,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, it was added, and I don't know. I don't
You
know.
know what's another thing that also is another kind of divine feminine thing is it's just outside New York City. It's the Lady Liberty, the Statue of Liberty,
Mm-hmm.
sitting on top of an Ishtar star, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
absolutely.
but there seems to be masculine traits about Lady Liberty, with a gigantic forearm and a very it seems to be a masculine face. I haven't seen a chick that looks like that before. I mean, nowadays you do,
Oh,
with the things going on. But
yeah. And you're right about the Venus thing. That's what I was forgetting to say. Like this is day star, son of dawn. It's all sort of about the morning star, which is Venus in the night sky. But of course, if you look at all the cultures around the world, who did they associate with the morning star with Venus? It's Ishtar. It's the all those sky goddesses that I listed off earlier. They're always associated with Venus. And Hillel ben Shahar. right? That's one of the Hebrew. Uh, it's interesting because Hillel was a pre-Islamic moon god who also was featured with that crescent moon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, there you go,
this stuff
man.
goes deep, man.
It's
It goes
deep.
deep. But you know, I think what's significant here is this, like you said, the Statue of Liberty, right? This association that America has to everything we've talked about today, especially the goddess. It's like it's just encoded into this country. It's like some of the people who founded this believed in this stuff. And I think a lot of the elites do. I think that that's partially the purpose of some of the mystery schools. I think once you get up into those higher levels of Freemasonry, you start to realize, oh, this is about goddess worship. And people who aren't Freemasons that are elites, they seem to be. New York City is a good example because Vanderbilt put his obelisk there in New York City. He brought it all the way over from Egypt. And you look into the obelisk and the alignment it makes and everything else, and you're back at goddess worship. Of course, right? So I think that this was foretold in the first place. America was foretold to be the philosophical empire. That was the belief in the order that Washington was a part of, and that's why you see him decked out with occult symbolism and these murals and such. He's playing a role in a much older script, and it's not necessarily what I believe; it's what they believed.
Hmm.
That's laid out in a book that came out 150 years before the founding of this country, actually. It's in New Atlantis by Sir Francis Bacon. You've got quotes in that book like the great Atlantis, which we shall call America, abounded once with tall ships. They were calling this place America, not because of America Vespucci, but because they were renaming Atlantis. This goes all the way back to that, I think. It goes back to the Greek orders. They were sort of cradling this belief and passing it down too. This was an idea established in an order even in Solon's time, which was 560 BC, I believe. He believed it. Solon was taken down to the esoteric Nile, the as above so below Nile. They went through a temple, they went down into a chamber, they connected to another labyrinth of chambers that opened up into caverns, and they went down there and they had pillars of knowledge down there. And Solon was taken down there by his higher master initiates to sort of initiate him further and give him more knowledge. And that's part of this is all wrapped up in that this coming or the how do I say this, the rebirth of Atlantis basically was part of one of the beliefs that they held. And later you see it with Plutarch. He said that he found uh, the lands of Hesperides in 40 AD, where the St. Lawrence is. They knew you could get onto St. Lawrence and come down to the Great Lakes. Renaming Atlantis. They're like, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's going to be the philosophical empire. So, and right alongside of that belief, you have the goddess stuff, along with everything else we've talked about.
Right, right, right. See, it's all connected, man.
Hmm.
And I, I I mean, I think kind of what we're getting to is that basically, like, you know, it seems like Babylon's trying to break through again, or come together again, and there's these principalities and these powers that are out there that are trying to wrap the world, and now however way it can, it is influencing a lot of the nations. I mean, I think it's probably influencing a lot of the people that are in power today,
Hmm.
and there's an agenda that needs to get accomplished on their end, and they're chipping away, obviously, to get this done. I wanted to circle back to just like Lady Liberty.
Hmm.
This is, you know I believe, I believe this is, the Satan. It's where, when you look at the characteristics of Lady Liberty, it's the light bearer, right? It's the fact that there's a chain that's broken on their ankle as well, which is, another symbolic way of portraying liberation. It's where it's that view that you've been released from this garden, and you can find yourself more. You're free from this bondage, all this kind of stuff. You're no longer chained to obedience or the structure that God has created for you. And I think what is going to also lead in with possibly this, and I don't know, maybe it's a UFO religion, but there is going to be a belief system behind what's coming. And I think it's to somehow into yourself and to exploit yourself to be a god. It's almost like there's this quintessence that they want you to exploit that has been a part of you the entire time, if that makes any sense. It's almost like in Eastern mysticism where they activate the Kundalini. You know, they work through the chakras, and as they work through these chakras, you can reach full Kundalini by this serpentine pattern that goes through each chakra. That's starts from your pelvis and goes all the way to your pineal gland, and then boom, you blast into this pretty much astral realm possibly, or this high state of vibration to where now you become like this I don't want to say divinity, but it's where you become like this god. What I'm saying pretty much is
Transhumanism.
yeah, well, and I think there's going to yes, I think that's what the technology is going to be used for,
Mhm.
because it's going to allow you to do this rather than through the occult.
I think it's going to be merged with the occult. I just personally,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
the occult is wrapped up in this technology in ways that we could have a show on. I think we will. We've talked about doing that CERN show, so
Oh
I
yeah,
want to do that with
yes.
you. And I'm gonna tell you right now, bro, this will be the CERN show to end all CERN shows.
Oh, let's
So
go.
let's do it.
I've
Let's do
been
it.
dying for a CERN show.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll bust that out soon. But I this is why I brought up Atlantis, because of the idea of the new Atlantis. It's the new philosophical occult empire. It's the rebirth of that. It's the phoenix of the old one. And you
Mm,
got Plato and Francis Bacon. They had their ideas on New Atlantis. The way they depicted it seemed to remain unfinished. Perhaps that's a clue, right? They were clued in, and they were giving their brothers in arms clues, though, like New Atlantis is meant to be an unfinished work for a while. This is something that we have to build. Keep that in mind. They at America right now might not be the completion of New Atlantis. It might be just a stage in its development. And think about it like this with the tech cities, the 15-minute cities. Peter Thiel, we talked about him. He was doing a lot of research into what they called corporate cities, and where they're going to implement all this technology. You can go live there, and it's basically, they'll give you a chip, I'm sure. Just go to the store and put your forehead up to something, and boom, there you go. You get your groceries that way. You're working for the corporate city, the big tech world now, you know. But Nostradamus said something interesting, because all these guys were initiates. Plato, Francis Bacon, Nostradamus, they were all clued in, and they were always giving clues out, like I said, to their brothers in arms. And Nostradamus said that in the 21st century, two major powers would become friends and unite in the North Pole. That was his prediction. And it's interesting because the Nazis believed that the major civilizations of the North Pole were at the top of Greenland, because the top of Greenland's so close. That's the Hyperborea, that's the Thule. And these tech guys, as we speak, are talking about setting up a new kind of city up there. There's something like deeply prophetic about it in a very occult sense, where they're going to take this technology and merge it with the occult. And it seems like they want to do it in Greenland. When you think about Bacon's New Atlantis, which Washington, Ben Franklin, they all read. Also, they were initiates. It's a book based on the concept that one day the mystery schools would again revive Atlantis. And I can't help but think that maybe when George Washington knew he was kind of doing that. And I think when he had that vision with the lady, he probably thought, "Oh, I've been chosen to do this." So, I mean, I could keep going.
yeah,
This stuff goes
yeah,
all day with the New Atlantis thing, but my point is, like, they've got their sights on Greenland. Trump has his sights on Greenland. Oh, those tech guys at the inauguration. Remember?
yeah,
They're all
yeah.
there. they're in it for something. Some of those guys switched to Republican overnight. Okay, hold on, something else is happening here.
Something's up here, man.
They
Yeah.
stand to gain something, and guess what? They've all invested big money in Greenland. And then you think about the pole shifts. You heard about this yet?
Hmm.
The coming pole shift. This is something that people believe is happening in other countries. It's like it hasn't hit the West yet as an idea, but I've heard people in Russia say, "Oh yeah, we know it's coming." Everybody's buying property up in Siberia because they're planning for a pole shift, and everybody's going to move north. People in China are
Hmm.
talking about it too. It's like this seems like the secret's out on that in some of these other nations. And it just makes me think, oh, is that why do the elites know about this too? Do they believe that the pole shift's coming? They're buying all this land in Greenland or investing in it right now. They have to seize the land up from Denmark, I think, and do all that first. But and but was that and is that going to be the solidification of the new Atlantis? Where it's like these guys have been working towards that all along. Like Ben Franklin, he used some of the treasure that was stored at Oak Island to fund the American Revolution. And he was an initiate of an order who put that treasure there.
Yeah.
Washington, he played his part in the American Revolution too, right? He was the general, he was the commander of the revolution. So they knew all about this. They read New Atlantis. So I'm thinking, when Ben Franklin is sailing to Oak Island to get treasure to fund the American Revolution, when George Washington's marching into battle with the 13 colonies going against the crown. I got to think that in their mind somewhere, they're fulfilling the prophecy of bringing about the new Atlantis. And they're
I
fashioning America in that sense.
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to be a part of New Atlantis, it's almost like the movie Elysium. Are you familiar with the movie Elysium with Matt Damon? It's like this
Mm,
dystopian world that's on planet Earth, but just in low orbit from Earth is a space station pretty much. It's the size of a country, and it's a pentagram. Uh, you know, it is a pentagram in the sky, and a pentagram is a 5 point star with a circle around it. And it's where all of the elites live. And it's this idea of Atlantis. It's this utopia. It's where they are using their technology to live forever while the people on Earth are generating the energy to power that technology. And you can see this kind of idea in a bunch of different movies. And in a lot of movies, the aliens are involved in this. Or artificial intelligence is involved in this. And what I think that the Atlanteans, the Hyperboreans, whatever, they're seeking a source of energy to give them divine, not only power, but to give them eternal life. You've got Ponce de Leon, who was trying to seek out the fountain of youth. You've got the Vril Society was trying to seek out this Vril energy, where alchemists were trying to take energy out of material objects because they believe everything has energy in it and stored in it, and that they were trying, and that this is actually the real definition of alchemy, not the fact that you can turn lead into gold, but they were trying to extract out this energy out of material objects to where they can house this energy in elixirs and drink these elixirs, and it can cure their ailments, it can cure their sickness, and you know revitalize their bodies and to live forever, if that makes any sense. It's almost literally like hearing about the fruit of the tree of knowledge and good and evil, right? It's like, you be at God's and surely you shall not die. So there's this concept that's a part of Atlantis, I feel like, that also it contributes to another idea, to that pentagram, that Elysium. And I think why they
mm,
specifically made it a pentagram is because the pentagram actually is a symbol that describes the four elements of creation, which is air, water, earth, and fire. And it's on each spoke of the star. And the circle that goes around the star is actually what you get by combining these four elements, and when they come together and it's such a perfect moment, it's what creates the ether. And the ether is like the darkness, the dark matter, the god particle, whatever you want to call it today. But they're trying to find this philosopher's stone to really access not only the divinity that they have the potential of exploiting inside of them, but also to give them eternal life.
Dude, you're blowing my mind. And you know what else?
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, brother. I'm bored. I'm dialed in, baby. You know what else the pentagram represents, perhaps as a double meaning to what you just laid out? The path of Venus in the night sky.
What, dude?
Yes,
Wow.
the complete path of Venus through the
Right.
night sky.
Right.
And I love how you're taking this back to the garden, because it seems like that's where it all goes back to the garden for us humans. Seems like it all goes back to that. And Cain, we've talked about him. I want to take it back to Cain for a second, because he goes off, he starts the civilization. Was that Atlantis?
I've thought that.
I've
You're
thought
not the
that
only one that
as
has
well.
I have thought that. And because I thought cities, right? And did he had children? Did he have 10 children by any chance? I can't remember. Because then that would be like kind of that would play along with the 10 governments, the 10 kings, and the 10 um governors or kingdoms or whatever, right? So there's this 10. But you know what also kind of made me think this as well?
Maybe he had five, one for each spoke of the pentagram.
Oh man, dude, that's wild. What if it was in the shape of a pentagram?
Right.
Oh my gosh. Maybe that's why is that
All
why they
Atlantis
mapped out?
itself. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, is that why they mapped out Washington D.C. to be the city of light, and their their roadways are shaped like a pentagram?
Yeah,
Um,
that's what Edgar Casey said the mound builders were doing in America. He said they were some of those big mound complexes that have all this crazy math and stuff are Casey said that they were built the mound builders built them and were intentionally trying to fashion them after knowledge from Atlantis. They were a nod to Atlantis. They were a sacred sort of motion towards the knowledge of Atlantis, is what Casey was saying. And they also said that some of the giants and the little people survived the fall of Atlantis. These are apparently entities that aren't fully human. Like it was like a multi-ethnical species kind of a place, and they came down and populated North America. And so when you get to the Cherokee and the Cherokee's myth of the little people, there was a belief that those were remnants of Atlantis. So it's like, wow, even the mound builders were like clued into Atlantis. How deep does this go? And then
mm,
yeah, then Washington and those guys, and we've talked about this, man. There seems to be it's there. There's a connection between those mound builders and Washington and the Society of Cincinnati and some of the stuff he was doing. Like some of the locations Washington was picking was the same locations that the mound builders picked to build their cities. It's crazy, man. I mean,
yeah.
you know, I feel like you were about to say something, so I didn't want to.
No, no. So there's something that I thought after I read it out of Enoch one time. We know that the 200 angels descended upon Mount Hermon, made a pact together, and they decided to copulate with human women. But I think in Enoch, and I'm looking at it right now, the group of the 200 angels was broken into 10 divisions.
Hmm.
For 20 angels were to rule over 10.
Oh yeah, I remember
And so
that.
there's 10 divisions of that. And that kind of makes me think of Atlantis with the 10 divisions as well, part of Atlantis. That makes
Hmm.
me think as well with the beast rising out of the sea with the 7 heads and the 10 horns, and the horns are the kings of the earth. There's something got to be with that. I don't think what I'm saying is like, 100%.
I
onto
got one
something.
for you. I got one for you. We're gonna take it deeper, bro. I came across this passage the other day. It's Jeremiah 5:15, and it is the judgment of Israel. And God says, I'm going to bring upon you a nation from far away, O house of Israel, says the Lord. Listen to this. It's an enduring nation, it's an ancient nation, a nation whose language you do not know, nor can you understand what they say. Their quiver is like an open tomb. All of them are mighty warriors. They shall eat up your harvest and your food. They shall eat your sons and daughters. They shall eat up your flocks and your herds. They shall eat your vines and your fig trees. They shall destroy you with the sword and your fortified cities in which you trust. Now, hold on a second. This is one of the spookiest passages I've ever seen in the Bible. Once you grasp what this is saying, who is this ancient nation? If Israel would not know their language, that means that they weren't speaking Semitic. And even Sumer is closely related to Semitic. In fact, in Akkadian times, it was full blown Semitic. So, who's more ancient than Sumer? Who is this talking about? We might be getting into Atlantis territory because further on it says he's going to send the nation from the north.
Mm.
Name me an ancient civilization in the Bible and in Bible times that was not Semitic. Who could that be? That's ancient, right? Like I know there were other groups that weren't Semitic, but groups that also are ancient. And I'm just like, man, is this some sort of remnant from Cain's civilization that's going to march down and
Mm.
take Israel? And they're mighty. They're one of the Hebrew words in this passage is melolam or mialam, meaning of old or mighty men of old, mighty men of renown. So you get that Nephilim aesthetic there. And I'm just trying to
Yeah.
figure out who this is talking about, but apparently they're cannibalistic. They're men of renown. They're men of old. You know, that's terminology associated with the Nephilim, and that they're coming down from the north and they speak some weird language. That's just I don't know. I just think that this is a crazy passage. You know, they're a tan. The Hebrew word for them is a tan as well. It's mighty like a river, enduring. So I'm wondering, were they even fully human? Were they part of the Atlantis group? So and look, I'll tell people too. I have reservations about Atlantis. Believe it or not, the occultists called it Atlantis, and I don't know if it was actually called Atlantis, but I do think that there was a civilization like that Cain started, and I don't know if they were fully human. And if we look at the seed war, what you see time and again is that entities are having children with men and producing these hybrids. It's the serpent seed. So
And you
why
think this is in the north?
it says later, let me find the verse, bro. It says later that he's going to send. Okay, so if you go to Jeremiah 6, it says, for evil looms out of the north and great destruction. And then there's another verse, I'll have to find it, where it says that he's going to send down a group from the north.
Well, this is interesting too. Looking in at Isaiah, right? This is basically where this is, in the King James version, at least, this is where you have in verse 12, it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" And then after that, this is interesting. It says, "For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north."
Hmm,
So
what
I don't
is
know if I don't know if that's talking about an actual location or what, but I mean, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, what verse is that again in
That's
Isaiah?
13.
Isaiah 13.
Oh, it's chapter 14, verse 13.
You said in your heart, I will send to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars, set on the mountain.
In the sides of the north. It's kind of
Huh.
yeah, this is kind of like
Oh,
interesting.
so yours says, I will sit on the mount of assembly on the sides of the north?
Yeah, it says, I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north.
Oh, that's right, because mine says on the heights of Zaphon, and I looked up Zaphon once and it meant north. So yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe this is, we're on to something here. Plus, all these people, especially these elites, they have doomsday bunkers in the north. There's also, doomsday vaults that are in the north. There's all kinds of things that are in the north, and who knows exactly, I mean, what is up there.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, the legend of Atlantis oftentimes is up in that northern area. That's Thule and Hyperborea, which you talked about,
Right.
and then all the orders like the Templars and the Rosicrucians, and who I think that's the Masons spun off of, but they trace their orders lineage back to Atlantis often, and the Anunnaki. So there's
Right.
possibly a
Right.
connection with the Anunnaki and Atlantis as well.
Now, I don't know if Shambhala, which is a Tibetan term, it's kind of like, it's part of that religious perspective where Shambhala is this mystical place. They believe it's on Earth, but they've
Mhm.
never found it, and they have a general location of where it might be, but it's not geographically real. So I think this is the gnosis where, with this Maitreya, the Maitreya is the one who basically will run Shambhala when it descends here, on Earth, or when and Shambhala could maybe not necessarily be an actual place. I mean, it could be a city. Maybe they're
Yeah.
in the process of making this city to where it is like the city of Babylon, right? And where you have this Maitreya who's running this place. Pretty much, this is it goes back to like the Raelian cult. It's like they need an embassy to come here. This
Yeah.
goes back to this whole idea of, you know these divine beings having some sort of place to dwell in.
Yeah. Well, isn't that said to be in the north as well? This mystical
I think,
city.
let's look. I think so.
So it reminds me of all this sort of reminds me of it's all sort of like Thule lore. And it's you
Mhm.
see it in some of the Irish folklore as well.
Yeah, it's located in the north.
Yeah, there you go. So and here's the Irish version of it. So around 1100 AD, there's these records of these people in Northern Ireland who see weird lights in the sky, I think, or they heard I think they either heard weird things coming from the north and maybe saw some weird stuff coming from the north. So they got in their ships and they traveled north to see what it was, and a city had appeared, sort of like a very magical, mystical crystal city. And these Irish people docked and went in there and talked to people. They talked to these people that look like people essentially, and they were Earth's record keepers, is what they told the Irish, and they were hospitable to them and taught them some things, and they sent them on their way, and basically, and then the city would disappear after a few days. It was all gone. But in the records, the Irish people said that they would every year when they saw the signal they would go and travel to this magical city that would appear and stop and talk to the Earth's record keepers. So it's like
That's
it was
wild.
there, but it wasn't there.
Right.
Like in and out of the realm,
Ah,
and it
wow.
was in the north.
You're about to send me down a rabbit hole again, brother.
Yeah,
You
this
did
is
it to me again.
man. We've gone deep on this one, and I mean maybe just to tie a bow on it, right? Like so, and the Templars they took their cross from the Anunnaki. It's an Anunnaki symbol that you see on like the breastplates of some of the Anunnaki priest kings. That's where the Templars got their cross. The Freemasons took their apron from what I understand, from the Sumerian priest kings because they wore an apron. So all this stuff sort of goes back to this group who was around before Sumeria slash Atlantis. And the Anunnaki, for me, it doesn't really get more alien than that. Those are cosmic entities.
Hmm.
And to tie a bow on it, in the Sumerian texts dealing with the Anunnaki, among them is mentioned Ishtar and Lilith,
Hmm.
of course. So it all kind of goes back to the same characters.
It does, man. It does. I had a lot of fun this episode, man.
Me too.
I think we dug deep, and I mean, there's still so much more to kind of go through. And you know, hey, I think we just got to keep researching this stuff and keep finding new information, especially to give back to the people, because there's things here at play that make a lot of sense biblically too, because this stuff does go back to a certain nature, and I think that this nature, these fallen entities, beings, celestials, whatever you want to call them, you know, I think the nature behind them is changing, but it's kind of generalized. You know, I think it's generalized in this some sort of feminine goddess uh, of some sort. But I also think that they have a trinity to their regime as well. You know, I think they're
Yeah.
trying to copy things that God has established because they know it works.
Yeah, if I had to guess, it would be what you said there. And if this changes, I'll let everybody know. But where I'm at in my research, I'm on board with that. And I think that if there was a Trinity or a bastardized Trinity, it would be the Assyrian Satan, the Assyrian aka Satan, aka Zeus or Marduk or Wotan or Odin. Then this goddess Babylon, and then Gadriel.
Mm.
That's who I would pick if I had to pick.
That's so interesting. I hope you have sweet dreams, my friend.
Yeah,
I
we're
I
praying.
hope
I'm praying after
yeah,
this
let's
one
pray
for
up, man.
sure.
We gotta pray up.
I know, bro, and I'm reflecting on some of the stuff we've talked about tonight, and I'm like, this. I don't know. This might be the craziest podcast episode of 2025, man. This, we went
Let's
down
go.
wild. This
Well,
went
you know
down
what?
wild.
I'm glad I could have provided some currency, you know, for the show tonight, man. You know, I've done a lot of work on this, and I mean, you've done, I mean, endless amount of hours on this kind of stuff. You know, I feel like I just got into this kind of stuff, but um, you know, I think there's a lot of connections that we made for everyone to kind of maybe plug and play or connect. A lot of puzzle pieces on the table is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and you know what? We didn't even get into the railing cult.
oh, I know.
It came up, but we didn't get into it.
Right, right. I brought up the divine feminine aspect of it,
Sure.
which I
So
mean, plugs a huge plug, you know, for what we're talking about and who these, you know, what that nature and how they're revealing themselves. They're revealing themselves as this feminine, and it made me think of the Palladians. It made me think of a bunch of other, you know, supposed, you know, species that are out there that people you know have had experiences with, but I
yeah,
think it's
like
like
the
you said, it comes down
Nordics.
to a trinity,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, that's what you said. I'm just going along with it.
Yeah, I think it is, man, and I think at the end of the day there's so many other trinities that you can formulate in each different age, if that makes any sense. I don't know if
Well,
age is
you've
the
got
right word, but
you see the triangle. You see a lot of these groups that we've mentioned tonight who sort of trace their lineage back to Anunnaki and Atlantis and all that. The seven, the mystery schools and the seven sciences, all that. That group loves to use a triangle.
yeah,
For the
yeah,
Freemasons, it's the triangle with the eye in it. Um, and I've come a long ways. I was using that symbol for my show when I first started, not associated with Freemasonry or anything like that. I just thought it was a cool symbol to throw up to be like, yeah, I'm talking about conspiracies here. It's the triangle with an eye. I thought I was, I didn't know anything. I was just a baby with this stuff. Of course, I took that down. I don't use it anymore because I realize who does use it and some of the reasons why. But yeah, they like that triangle, and that's kind of a Trinity like symbol. And you see that triangle in the ancient world over here in North America too. Some of the mound builders were using that. They had a symbol that was a triangle with like it looked like a face inside of it.
that's why I think, man, like goes all the way back to Babylon, man. Like I think that tower was a pyramid. And why I
Mm,
think it was a pyramid is because when God confounded the language and confused the people and they no longer could understand each other, they actually got dispersed after that, after the tower was actually destroyed by God as well. I don't believe it was this spiral staircase building that kind of gets smaller as it goes up. I think it was a pyramid because when you look at all the cultures and the nations around the world, especially some that are located along the 33rd parallel, which is interesting because there's a lot of magnetics that get into that idea with those locations. But I think that this is why they were building ziggurats. This is why they were building pyramids. They were just taking what they just got done doing. They're taking the idea from what one world religion they were just a part of, and they're trying to do it themselves, and they're trying to practice the occult once again to try and make that gate into the metaphysical and to break through that threshold
mm,
from the subphysical, if that makes any sense.
Did you say the 33rd parallel?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, there's something to that too. I mean, I know I've been seeing the 37th parallel come up
Mm.
often, and it's called the extraterrestrial highway. Highway
Oh wow.
30. So, and there's like all kinds of connections with Jack Parsons and Crowley. That's another show for another time. But I was just curious about which parallel you were talking about. But yeah, man, I'm with you. I'm with you. We've got a nice we've laid a nice foundation with this episode so we can go wherever we want to go with the next one, man. And I'm thinking maybe CERN. I think it's time to maybe
I'm
go
in.
there.
That's something I got to dig into. So let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, man, this is
Yeah.
great,
Thank you,
Stephen.
man.
I
Thank
mean,
you, brother.
yeah, no, thank you, bro. You blew my mind, man. I love working with you, dude. And it's this was fun and educational for me too. So tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, man. So you guys can find me. The video stuff that my content is on is YouTube. You can just search it, The Biblical Hitmen. And I'm on audio stuff as well, Apple Podcast, Spreaker, Spotify as The Biblical Hitmen. And it's plural, it's not singular. Um, my co-hosts have taken an extended vacation, but we'll see how that comes to be here in the future. And I'm on social media, so come find me there.
Love it. Love it. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. And as always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.